I'm Melina, and until my 30th birthday, the most exciting part of my life was when the accounting firm I worked for decided to switch from PC to Mac. Yeah, not exactly headline stuff, but then at a friend's birthday bash, everything changed. That night I stood at the corner of a cramped living room, clutching a soda and feeling awkward in my too tight dress. The music was loud, way too loud for conversation, but apparently just right for him. Mark. He was a head taller than most, which was probably why he spotted me. He sauntered over with a confidence that made my heart skip. "Hey, you're Melina, right?" His voice was clear even over the thumping bass. Yeah. And you are?" I sipped my drink, trying to look calmer than I felt. "Mark, I've seen you around. Mind if I join you?" He didn't wait for an answer, just took it as a given and stood next to me. "Not at all," I said, my voice nearly lost to the latest pop hit blaring through the speakers. "So, Melina, what brings you here tonight?" He leaned in, his tone casual but his eyes intense. "Just here to celebrate Sarah's birthday. You know her long?" "I went to college with her. She keeps inviting me to these things." He shrugged. "Can't say no, can I?" We laughed, and it felt natural, easy. "I get it. I work with her. She's kind of hard to say no to. An accountant, right?" He nodded like he knew all along. "That's right. Numbers are my game," I joked, though I usually found nothing funny about spreadsheets. "Sounds thrilling," he grinned, and I couldn't tell if he was mocking me or not. "Oh, absolutely. It's all wild parties and high stakes in the accounting world." We laughed again, and that's when I felt it. The ease of talking to someone who seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. It was a new feeling, exciting, and a bit scary. "You want to grab some air?" he suggested, tilting his head towards the backyard. I nodded, grateful to escape the noise. Outside, the cool air was a relief. "So what's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" I asked, trying to sound smoother than I felt. "Just looking for a good time, I guess, and maybe someone cool to hang out with," he said with a smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. We talked about everything and nothing, movies, books we liked, how he was into graphic design but stuck at a corporate gig he didn't love. It was as if we'd known each other for years. As the night wound down, he pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number?" "I'd really like to see you again, Melina." I hesitated, not used to this kind of attention, but something about him felt right. "Sure," I said, punching my number into his phone. He smiled, his whole face lighting up. "Great. I'll call you. We should go out, just the two of us." "Sounds good," I managed, my stomach doing flips. I watched him go, a part of me still in disbelief that this was my life now. Maybe turning 30 wasn't so bad after all. Maybe it was just the start of something truly great. The days after Mark's call felt like a blur. Before I knew it, I was getting ready for our first date. My nerves were all over the place. It wasn't like I had much experience in this department. I chose a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, but hoped it did the trick. Mark picked me up at 7 sharp. His car was a clean, well-kept sedan, nothing flashy, but it suited him. As I got in, he flashed me a smile that could knock you sideways. "You look great, Melina," he said. "Thanks," I mumbled, my face probably red as a tomato. "You look nice too." Dinner was at this cozy little Italian place he knew. The food smelled amazing, but my stomach was doing somersaults. We ordered pasta, him with some fancy sauce and me with plain old marinara. "So, Melina, tell me something about you that no one else knows," he said, twirling his spaghetti expertly onto his fork. "Well, I'm pretty boring, but I guess not everyone knows I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute," I replied, playing with my food more than eating it. "Really now? That's pretty cool. You'll have to show me sometime." "Sure," I said, starting to relax a little. "What about you? Any hidden talents?" "I make a mean breakfast burrito," he boasted with a grin. "Best you'll ever have." "I'll take your word for it. Maybe you can prove it sometime," I teased. The conversation flowed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We saw each other constantly. Mark would come over after work, or we'd meet for lunch near his office. He introduced me to his favorite spots around town, little nooks I'd never noticed before. It was like seeing the city for the first time. Things took a serious turn when he invited me to meet his parents, Jack and Mary. They lived in a small but cozy house filled with photos and knickknacks. Mary hugged me the second we walked in. "Oh, we've heard so much about you, dear," she said, squeezing my shoulders. "Mark, she's lovely," Jack said, passing me the potatoes. "Thanks, Mom," Mark said, and I could tell he was pleased. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation was nonstop. "So, Melina, Mark tells us you're an accountant." "That must be interesting," Jack said, passing me the potatoes. "It has its moments," I replied. "Mostly just numbers, but I like the order of it." "And how's your family?" Mary asked, genuinely interested. "They're good, thanks. My dad's a businessman, always busy, but he's been really supportive of me." It was all happening fast, but it felt right. It was as if everything in my life had been leading up to this. Meeting Mark, feeling like someone finally saw me for who I was, not just some plain Jane accountant. One evening, a few months into our whirlwind romance, we were walking along the riverbank. The city lights reflected off the water, and it was pretty in a postcard kind of way. "Melina, I've been thinking," he started, stopping and facing me. "Yeah?" I asked, my heart starting to race. "I don't want to wait any longer. I know this is fast, but will you marry me?" Just like that, my world changed. No hesitation, no doubt, just a simple yes. "Mark, I'll marry you." The whirlwind didn't stop there. Soon after, I introduced Mark to my father, and he took to Mark immediately, appreciating his straightforward manner and obvious affection for me. "He's a good man, Melina," Dad said, giving his approval, which meant the world to me. So we got married. It was a modest wedding, nothing too extravagant, but it was perfect for us. I even found myself loving the way I looked in my wedding dress, something I'd never imagined. Smiling wide, I posted photos on my social media, sharing my joy with friends and family. After the wedding, life didn't slow down. It picked up pace. Mark and I barely had time to savor our newlywed bliss before he suggested something big. "Hey, Melina, I've been thinking," he said one evening as we unpacked another box of wedding gifts in our cramped apartment. "How about we move in with my folks?" I paused, a coffee mug in hand. "Live with your parents?" He nodded, looking serious. "Yeah, they're not getting any younger, and I'd feel better if we were around to help out. Plus, it would save us some money on rent." It made sense, I guess, but moving in with the in-laws? That was sitcom territory. "Are you sure they'd want us there all the time?" "Absolutely," he assured me. "Mom's been hinting about it ever since we got engaged. Come on, it'll be good." So 2 weeks later, there we were, pulling up to his parents' house with our lives packed into a bunch of boxes. Mark's mom, Mary, was waving from the porch before we even got out of the car. "Oh, Melina, we're so thrilled to have you both here," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that was a bit too tight. "Welcome home, son." "And you too, Melina," Jack, Mark's dad, said, clapping him on the back. The house was cozy, stuffed with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum of the 1970s. I tried to keep a smile on my face, but I was already missing our little apartment. Mark sensed my hesitation. "It's going to be great, you'll see," he whispered as we carried boxes inside. The first few days were an adjustment. Mary was constantly hovering, always popping into our room to ask if we needed anything. "Just making sure you're comfortable," she'd chirp, while I tried not to cringe at the invasion of privacy. One evening, we all sat down for dinner, Mark, me, Jack, and Mary. The conversation was painfully mundane until Mark dropped another bomb. "So the house needs some major repairs," he announced casually between bites of meatloaf. "Repairs?" "Yeah, the roof's a mess, and the plumbing's from the dark ages," he said. Jack nodded solemnly. "We were thinking," Mark continued, avoiding my gaze, "that maybe we could all chip in for the costs." I glanced at Mary, who was suddenly very interested in her plate. "All of us?" "Well, I just got this pay cut at work," Mark muttered, "so I'm a bit strapped at the moment." There it was. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "I'll see what I can do," I managed to say, even though I wanted to say much more. Mary perked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, Melina, that would be so helpful. You're such an angel." The next few weeks were a blur of contractors and repairs. I wrote checks and smiled through gritted teeth as Mary gushed about how wonderful the house was looking. Jack slapped me on the back. "You're really part of the family now, Melina," he said. "Part of the family. Sure, the part that pays for everything." One particularly grueling day, after yet another round of expensive decisions, I collapsed on our bed, exhausted. Mark came in and sat beside me. "Thanks for handling all this, Melina," he said, sounding almost sincere. "It's fine," I lied, staring at the ceiling. "Just didn't realize how much it would be." He squeezed my hand. "It'll all be worth it. This is for our future, right?" "Our future," I echoed, not quite sure whose future we were building anymore. As I lay there, listening to Mark's steady breathing, I couldn't help but wonder if moving in was the right decision. But there was no going back now. I was in this deep, and I had to see it through, whatever the cost. After the renovations, the house looked great, like something out of a magazine. Honestly, despite the financial strain, I felt a bit of pride looking around. We decided to throw a small dinner party to celebrate, just the four of us. That's when everything took an unexpected turn. We were in the middle of dinner, laughing and sharing stories when Mary suddenly got quiet. The room felt heavy all of a sudden. She looked at Jack, then at us, and her eyes were teary. "We need to tell you both something important," she said, her voice shaky. Mark and I exchanged looks. "What's going on?" I asked, my stomach tightening. Jack took a deep breath. "The house, it's mortgaged. Heavily mortgaged. We owe $200,000 and the bank could take it away if we don't settle the debt in 2 months." My fork clattered to my plate. "What do you mean? All the repairs we just paid for?" Mary started sobbing. "We were ashamed and we thought we could manage it. But after the repairs and everything, there's just no way." I felt like I was in a bad dream. All the money, all the effort. It was for a house that wasn't even secure. "So what are you saying now?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "Well," Mark started, his eyes avoiding mine. "I was hoping maybe, Melina, you could talk to your father." "Are you serious?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Ask my dad for $200,000? It's just after his help, the house would be secure for us, for our future," Mark pleaded. Mary's sobbing grew louder, making me feel like the villain in this crazy drama. "Please, Melina, it's our home. We've spent decades in this house." Mark's pleading wore me down. I'll think about it," I finally muttered, feeling trapped. The next day, I called my dad hesitantly, explaining the situation. To my surprise, he agreed to help, but on one condition. "I'll give the money, Melina, but only with a formal agreement, a receipt. I want everything documented." When I relayed this to Mark, he wasn't happy. "Why does it have to be so formal? Can't he just trust us?" "It's $200,000, Mark. It's a lot of money, and he's just being cautious," I argued, feeling the divide between us grow. "He'll get his paperwork," Mark muttered, clearly annoyed. The paperwork was drawn up, and the money was transferred. Mary and Jack were relieved, constantly thanking me, but the air between Mark and me had changed. There was a coldness that wasn't there before. Just when I thought my life couldn't get any darker, tragedy struck with brutal suddenness. "Melina, it's your Aunt Judith." Her voice came through the line, shaky and choked. "Your dad, he had a heart attack. It's bad." My heart dropped to my stomach. "What? How is he?" "He didn't make it, honey." "I'm so sorry." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "No, that can't be right," I mumbled, numb. I hung up and turned to find Mark standing in the doorway. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "My dad, he's gone," I managed to say before everything inside me broke, and I started sobbing. Mark came over and put his arm around me, but it felt like being hugged by a stranger. "I'm sorry, Melina," he said, and it sounded sincere, but I was too lost in my grief to really hear him. Exhausted from another long day of funeral planning and negotiations with the agency, I came home earlier than usual. I expected the house to be quiet, but as I inserted my key into the front door, I heard voices from the living room. It was Mark, his tone dripping with frustration and disgust, talking to his parents. I can't do this anymore. Living with her is driving me nuts. She's just, it's too much, Mark complained. His mom, usually so sweet and understanding, replied in a stern whisper, You have to hold on a bit longer, Mark. We need to figure out what to do with those receipts your father-in-law had. Melina has them now. The sooner I get out, the better. I'll grab those receipts and destroy them. And then I'll start all over again with that rich beauty I told you about. Mark's voice was cold, calculated. I felt a chill run down my spine. Here I was mourning my father while the people I lived with were plotting behind my back. They weren't the loving family I thought I married into. Instead, they saw me as nothing more than a means to an end, a way to secure their financial troubles. Rage mixed with shock, but I knew I had to keep my cool, so I slammed the door loudly as if I had just come in, disrupting their scheming. Oh, Melina, you're back early. How did everything go with the funeral plans? Mary's voice shifted instantly to one of concern, her eyes wide with faint innocence. I forced a smile, my stomach turning. It's all coming together, thanks for asking. As I spoke, I could see the quick glances they shot each other, their faces a mask of fake concern. It made my skin crawl, knowing their true colors. But I realized that showing my cards now wouldn't help. I needed to be smart. I needed to protect what was mine, and possibly even get some justice for their deceit. The funeral was somber, the air heavy with grief and murmured condolences. But as the ceremony wrapped up and we returned to Mark's parents' house, the true colors of the family I married into began to show as we gathered in the living room, sipping on lukewarm coffee. Mark's demeanor shifted. His usually charming facade crumbled away, revealing something more. With a cold laugh, he looked straight at me and dropped the bomb. Melina, pack your things. You need to get out. I've got someone else now. Someone better. His words should have been like a slap. I pretended to be stunned. But before I could respond, Mary chimed in with a snide giggle. We've really had enough of you, dear. We only put up with you for your money. What about the house? I asked, feigning innocence. The house that I paid to fix, the $200,000 I poured into it? Mary laughed harder, as if I'd told the best joke of the year. Oh, sweetie, this house is ours. You're nothing here. Mark's smirk widened. And those receipts you're so proud of? Found them in your dad's house and burnt them. They're gone. For a moment, I let them believe they had won. But then I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter. My reaction confused them, their smiles faltering. Why are you laughing? What's so funny? Mark demanded. I wiped a tear from my eye. Still chuckling, you three are just pathetic. You think you're so clever. The receipts you destroyed? They were copies. The real ones are safe with my lawyer. The color drained from both their faces. Mark's arrogance turned to panic. You can't prove anything, he stammered. I can and I will, I shot back, my voice steady and firm. Now I want my money back, all of it, or my next call is to the police. Mark and Jack looked at each other, their earlier confidence replaced by fear. Jack, usually so bold and brash, began to plead. Melina, please, let's talk about this. We can sort something out. With the truth out in the open and the leverage squarely in my hands, the negotiations with Mark and his parents dragged on longer than I expected. It was clear they were trying every angle to sway the terms in their favor. But I wasn't about to budge. Look, it's simple, I stated firmly during one of our numerous discussions at their, now legally mine, kitchen table. The house gets transferred to my name in exchange for the IAUs. That's the deal. No more games. Finally, they relented. We all agreed that the best course of action was to make everything official and legal. I insisted that everything be documented by a lawyer and confirmed with the proper papers. I want no corners cut, I emphasized. At the lawyer's office, the atmosphere was tense as documents were signed and notarized. I watched closely as each signature was applied, ensuring there was no room for further deceit. Once everything was finalized, I collected the documents related to the transfer and turned to Mark's mother, who looked deflated yet somehow still carried a hint of her former haughtiness. "I'll be keeping these in a safe place," I said, holding up the papers before slipping them into a folder, just to ensure no one is tempted to pull any stunts. With the legalities handled, the divorce proceedings were straightforward. Mark was quiet, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be seen. When the final papers were signed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A chapter closed. On the day they moved out, I stood on the porch of my now fully owned house and watched Mark, his mom, and Dad carry their belongings to a rental van. Their movements were slow, the mood somber. I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't how I imagined my marriage ending, but under the circumstances, it was the best possible outcome. After everything settled down and I began to enjoy my newfound peace, word got back to me through friends about Mark and his predicament. Apparently, the grass wasn't greener on the other side. His mistress had dumped him not long after our divorce, and his parents, they were now crammed into a tiny apartment, a stark downgrade from the comfortable house they once had. It seemed karma had caught up with them quicker than I expected. Despite their situation, they started reaching out to me, bombarding me with calls and messages, probably hoping to weasel their way back into my life or at least my house. But I was done with their deceit. I blocked their numbers without a second thought and blacklisted them on all social media. It was liberating, cutting the final threads that connected us. One afternoon, as I was enjoying a quiet moment with a book in my living room, a knock came at my door. Peering through the peephole, I saw Mark standing there, a pathetic figure holding a bouquet of flowers. The audacity of it made me scoff. Opening the door, I couldn't help but laugh outright at the sight of him. "Really, Mark? Flowers?" He shuffled uncomfortably, the bouquet seeming to wilt along with his spirits. "Melina, I've realized so many things. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Remember when you told me I disgusted you?" I interrupted, leaning against the doorframe, not bothering to hide my amusement at his discomfort. "What changed, Mark? Run out of options?" He looked down, the shame clear on his face. I made mistakes, but I'm here to make things right." I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for him. Almost. "You're not here to make things right, Mark. You're just desperate to get back to your comfortable life. But guess what? That life doesn't exist anymore. Not for you." His face fell, and he took a step back, as if my words were physical blows. "Melina, please, save it." I cut him off sharply. "I want you to leave. Don't come back here. We're done. Forever." Mark stood there for a second longer, his hope visibly crumbling. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his shoulders hunched in defeat. Returning to my book, I smiled to myself. The quiet of the house wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, a stark contrast to the chaos that once reigned here. I was finally at peace, living life on my terms, and no bouquet of flowers or sweet talk could disrupt that. I was truly, finally free.
"Let's keep our marriage a secret for now," Marcus said, carefully folding our new marriage certificate and sliding it into his briefcase. "It's better for my career." I stood in the courthouse hallway, my simple white dress suddenly feeling too tight. We had been married for only 20 minutes, but already, Marcus was treating it like something to hide. I'm Olivia, 31 years old, and I had just become Mrs. Walker, but apparently no one was supposed to know. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years before he suggested a small courthouse wedding. No guests, no celebration. "It'll be romantic," he said, but now I wasn't so sure. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Whatever you think is best." Marcus smiled, kissed my cheek, and checked his phone. "I've got a meeting. Dinner tonight?" Then he walked away, looking perfect as always, while my heart felt anything but. 2 weeks later, I was organizing our home office when I found something shocking. A stack of fancy wedding invitations in Marcus's desk drawer. "You are invited to the wedding of Marcus James Walker and Victoria Bennett." I stared at the invitation. The date was 3 months away. Marcus, my husband, was planning a wedding to someone else. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Meeting running late. Don't wait up. I smiled. No problem. Take your time. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. Instead, I made a plan. The next morning, I met with Diana, a lawyer friend. I showed her everything. Our marriage certificate, the wedding invitations, suspicious texts. Her eyes widened. He's marrying someone else while legally married to you. That's illegal. I nodded. What can I do? Diana smirked. The real question is, how much trouble do you want to cause? Over the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly, the loving, trusting wife. I never questioned Marcus's late nights or sudden weekend trips. Meanwhile, I gathered more proof. Victoria was 25 from a wealthy family, and Marcus clearly thought she was a better match for his career. You're handling this well, Diana observed. I shrugged. Marcus thinks I'm naive. Let him keep thinking that. As June approached, Marcus became more anxious. He was juggling two lives, and it was catching up to him. He started making mistakes, leaving wedding details on his laptop, taking calls from Victoria when he thought I wasn't listening. One night, he sat me down, looking serious. Liv, I think we need some time apart. Oh, I said, keeping my face neutral. I just think we rushed into this too quickly, he continued. We want different things. I understand, I said softly. Relief filled his face. You're amazing, Liv. I knew you'd understand. We can keep this private, right? I smiled. Of course, Marcus. Everything will be handled exactly as it should be. That night, he packed a bag and left, probably heading straight to Victoria's. As soon as he was gone, I texted Diana. He took the bait. Time for phase 2. Marcus thought he was in control, but on June 15th, his perfect plan was going to explode in his face. The weeks before June 15th felt like a carefully planned game. Marcus had officially moved out, acting like a regretful husband who needed space. Meanwhile, I gathered more proof, including recordings of his phone calls about the wedding with Victoria, completely unaware that I had placed a legal recording device in our home office. Through social media, I learned that Victoria's family was going all out for their daughter's perfect day. The wedding was set for the luxurious Grand River Hotel, with over 300 guests attending. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus, who insisted on a secret courthouse wedding with me, now wanted a grand public celebration. Diana kept me updated. Everything's ready, she told me. The police are on standby. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? I nodded, thinking about all the nights Marcus had lied so easily. He wanted a big audience. I'm just making sure he gets one. 2 days before the wedding, Marcus called. Liv, I hope you're okay. I know this must be hard. I cut him off. I'm fine, Marcus. Actually, I've been thinking about what you said, and you were right. He sounded surprised. I was. Completely, I said. Sometimes people just aren't who we think they are. He had no idea how true that was. On the morning of June 15th, I dressed in a sharp blue suit, applied my makeup with a steady hand, and picked up the manila envelope full of evidence. At 11:30 a.m., Diana met me at the hotel lobby. The officers are in place, she whispered. Ready. I thought about Marcus's lies, his arrogance, the way he dismissed me like I was nothing. More than ready. We walked toward the ballroom, where wedding guests chatted excitedly. A coordinator stopped us. I'm sorry, but this is a private event. I smiled. Oh, I know. I'm here for the wedding. She frowned. Your name? Mrs. Walker, I said. The bride. Her face paled. That's impossible. The bride is Miss Bennett. Diana stepped forward, handing over her business card. There's been a mistake, but not on our part. We need to speak with Marcus Walker immediately. Moments later, chaos erupted. Security was called. Then the police arrived just as planned. Marcus was pulled from the groom's suite, his face turning pale when he saw me. Liv, he stammered. What are you doing here? Hello, husband, I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I thought I should attend your wedding. After all, we're still legally married. Gasps filled the room. Victoria's father stormed forward. What is the meaning of this? Diana handed over the evidence. Mr. Bennett, Marcus Walker married my client 2 months ago. He is now attempting to commit bigamy, which is a criminal offense. Marcus turned red. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and hit play. His own voice filled the room, discussing wedding details with Victoria while admitting he was already married. Victoria stood frozen in her wedding dress, tears running down her face. Her father looked furious. Diana turned to the officers. "I believe it's time." The police stepped forward and arrested Marcus, reading him his rights. The guests whispered in shock. Victoria's mother tried to comfort her, while Mr. Bennet was already calling his lawyers. Diana touched my arm, ready to go. I glanced at the chaos Marcus had caused. The lies, the betrayal, the shattered wedding. "Yes," I said. "I think my work here is done." As we stepped outside, Diana asked, "Why didn't you confront him sooner?" I smiled. Because Marcus always cared about appearances. It was only right to let him face the truth in front of the people he wanted to impress. The sunlight felt warm on my face. For the first time in months, I felt free. Marcus had tried to keep me in the shadows. Instead, his lies had been exposed in the brightest light of all. Exactly where they belonged. The aftermath of Marcus's failed wedding unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Within hours, the story had spread through both our professional circles. Marcus, the master manipulator, found himself facing not just legal consequences, but the complete destruction of the carefully crafted image he'd built. Victoria's father, as I learned through Diana, was pressing charges for fraud beyond the bigamy charge. Apparently, Marcus had convinced the Bennets to invest in several business ventures that were starting to look suspiciously like a Ponzi scheme. The DA is very interested in the evidence we gathered, Diana told me over coffee a week later. Those recordings didn't just catch him admitting to the double marriage, they caught him discussing multiple fraudulent schemes. He was using the wedding to secure more investments from Victoria's family. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, absorbing the information. And Victoria? Devastated but grateful, surprisingly. She sent a message through her lawyer thanking you for stopping her from making the biggest mistake of her life. Apparently, there were red flags she'd been ignoring. I knew all about those red flags. The constant need for privacy, the mysterious business meetings, the way he'd twist situations to his advantage. I'd seen them all, but I'd chosen to see them through the lens of love and trust. Never again. Marcus tried to contact me from jail, leaving messages with promises of explanations, pleas for understanding, even threats. I forwarded them all to Diana without listening to them. His words had lost their power over me. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, given the circumstances. Marcus had no defense, no leverage, and no choice but to agree to my terms. The judge was particularly unsympathetic to his attempts to claim any marital assets. "You tried to enter into a fraudulent marriage while already legally married," the judge stated flatly. "You're lucky your wife isn't pursuing additional civil charges." My colleague Sarah caught me in the hospital hallway one morning, concern etched on her face. "Are you really okay? After everything that happened?" I considered her question carefully. "You know what's strange? I am. For months, I carried the weight of his deception, planning and preparing for that moment. Now that it's over, I feel lighter." And it was true. The anxiety that had lived in my chest since finding those wedding invitations had dissolved, replaced by a sense of quiet strength. I'd faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser. 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. It was Victoria's mother, elegant and poised despite the obvious discomfort of the situation. "I needed to thank you in person," she said, perching on the edge of the visitor's chair. "Not just for saving Victoria from marriage to that man, but for handling it the way you did. You could have exposed everything much earlier, made an even bigger scandal." I shook my head. That wouldn't have served any purpose. I needed to make sure he couldn't twist his way out of it, couldn't make more victims. She nodded, understanding. "Well, Victoria is doing much better now. She's focusing on her career, being more cautious with her trust. You taught us all a valuable lesson about looking beneath the surface." As she left, I thought about lessons learned. Marcus had taught me that some people view relationships as transactions, love as a currency to be traded for advantage. But he'd also taught me my own strength, my capacity for strategic thinking under emotional pressure. Deanna called me last week with news that Marcus had accepted a plea deal. He would serve time for both the bigamy and fraud charges. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. The man who had been so concerned with keeping options open now found all his options closed. "Any regrets?" Diana asked after telling me the news. I thought about that day in the courthouse, when Marcus slipped our marriage certificate into his briefcase like it was a shameful secret. I thought about the nights I'd spent planning, gathering evidence, preparing for the moment of truth. I thought about Victoria in her wedding dress, saved from a life of lies. No, I said finally. No regrets. Sometimes the best thing you can do with a toxic secret is bring it into the light. Now, 6 months after that fateful June day, I'm sitting in my newly redecorated home office. The space that once held so many of Marcus's lies has been transformed, much like I have. On my desk sits a small plaque Diana gave me. The truth has a way of rising to the surface. I've learned that love shouldn't require secrets, that trust once broken cannot be repaired, and that sometimes the strongest response to betrayal is not immediate revenge but patient, calculated justice. Marcus wanted to keep our marriage hidden in darkness. Instead, his deception was exposed in the brightest way possible. He thought he was the clever one, playing everyone for his benefit. In the end, his greatest mistake was underestimating the quiet strength of the woman he thought he could simply erase from his story. Sometimes I wonder if he ever truly knew me at all. The real me, not the compliant, understanding wife he thought he'd married, but the woman who refused to be made invisible. I hope he thinks about that during his time in prison. I hope he remembers that some secrets are too big to keep, and some betrayals too deep to hide. As for me, I'm writing my own story now, and there's not a single secret in it. David texted, "Don't wait up, working late again." I looked at my phone, a small smile forming. His location showed he wasn't heading to his office. He was going to his other house in Oakwood Heights, the one he thought I didn't know about. I'm Anna Porter. For 3 years, I've watched my husband of 15 years live a secret life, thinking I was too naive to notice. The clues were everywhere: suspicious credit card charges, whispered phone calls, and business trips that didn't add up. But David underestimated me. "You're just a housewife," he'd say when I asked about our finances. "You wouldn't understand." What he didn't know was that before I became a housewife, I worked in forensic accounting. I left my job when our daughter Sophie was born, but I never lost my ability to follow the money. Sitting in our living room, I opened my laptop and checked the bank statements. Another large transfer to an account I had already traced. David thought he was smart, hiding money through his company. He had no idea I had been tracking every transaction, every lie. My phone buzzed. Sophie. She was away at college. "Mom, did you know Dad was in town last week? My roommate saw him with some woman and a little boy at the mall." I took a deep breath. "Really? That's interesting. He told me he was in Chicago for a conference." "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetie. Focus on school. I've got this handled." I closed the message and pulled out a thick folder filled with bank records, property documents, and photos. 3 years ago, when I first got suspicious, I hired a private investigator. That's how I found out about Maria, a young executive at David's company, and their 5-year-old son, Thomas. At first, it crushed me. 15 years of marriage and he had another family. But instead of confronting him right away, I watched and waited. I wanted to know everything. I learned how he met Maria during a company retreat, bought them a house, set up trust funds, and spent weekends with them, pretending to be on business trips. He even gave Thomas his grandfather's middle name, the same one he refused to give Sophie because it wasn't sophisticated enough. The front door opened. David walked in, loosening his tie. "Hey honey, rough day at the office," he said, kissing my cheek. He smelled of unfamiliar perfume and faintly of bubble bath. "I bet it was," I said, closing my laptop. "How's the Miller account?" He launched into a long story about meetings and deadlines. I watched him lie, noticing how his left eye twitched, a habit I'd known since we met. "You seem distracted," he said. "Just thinking about something interesting I learned today," I said lightly. "Did you know Oakwood Heights has one of the best school districts in the state? Thomas must be doing well there." David froze. His face turned pale. What are you talking about?" I pulled out a photo, him, Maria, and Thomas at a school carnival. "He has your eyes," I said, but his mother's smile. "Anna, I can explain," he stammered. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I interrupted. 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days. That's how long I've known. Every lie, every dollar you took, every weekend you spent with them instead of us. I have it all documented. David collapsed onto the couch, his confidence gone. How? Why didn't you say anything? I stood gathering my folder. Because I needed to be sure what kind of man I married. And now I am. I walked toward the stairs, then turned back. Oh, and David. Don't bother checking our accounts tonight. You might find some surprises. His eyes widened in panic. What did you do? I paused at the top of the stairs. Nothing yet. But don't worry. Everything is perfect. As I shut our bedroom door, I heard him scrambling to make calls. My phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. Everything is in place. Should we move to phase 2? I typed one word. Perfect. This morning, I woke up to find David's side of the bed empty. He had spent the night in his office, making frantic phone calls and trying, and failing, to access our frozen accounts. I could hear him pacing downstairs, his footsteps heavy with stress. I took my time getting ready, carefully applying my makeup and slipping into a crisp white blouse and black pencil skirt. Today was important. Today was the day I had been planning for 3 years. When I came downstairs, David was waiting at the kitchen counter, looking exhausted. Anna, we need to talk, he said, his voice rough. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I poured myself a cup of coffee, stirring slowly. Like how you fixed things with Maria? Buying her a house and moving our money into secret accounts. His face darkened. You don't understand. It was about protecting our assets. Maria's house, Thomas's trust fund, it was all just business investments. I let out a short laugh. Business investments? That's your excuse. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. David's voice, telling Maria he would leave me soon, that she and Thomas were his real family now. You recorded me? He sputtered, his face flushing. That's illegal. Not when you're having these conversations in public places. The park where you meet Thomas, the restaurants where you celebrate secret anniversaries, all legal. David gripped his coffee mug, his hands shaking. What do you want? Money? I can work something out. I don't want your money, David. I want justice. I pulled out a folder and set it on the counter. These are copies of financial records proving you've been moving our joint assets into private accounts. Accounts that, as of last night, are frozen and under investigation for fraud. He lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Don't bother. These are just copies. The originals are with my lawyer, the bank fraud department, and your company's board of directors. His face turned pale. The board? His voice cracked. You sent this to the board? Of course. They deserve to know what their CFO has been doing with company funds. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it desperately. As he read the message, all the remaining color drained from his face. They're calling an emergency meeting. I'm suspended pending investigation. He looked up at me, realization sinking in. How long have you been planning this? I took a sip of my coffee. Remember 3 years ago when you told me I wouldn't understand finances because I was just a housewife? That's when I started. Every lie, every transaction, every secret, I documented it all. Maria, he started. Already knows, I cut in. She got the documents this morning, including proof that her house was bought with embezzled company funds. She's probably trying to reach you right now. Right on cue, his phone rang. Maria's name flashed on the screen. David stared at it, frozen. You should answer, I said. She'll want to know why her accounts are frozen too. He stumbled out of the kitchen, his voice panicked as he picked up the call. Maria's frantic voice echoed from the other room. My own phone buzzed. Sophie. Mom, is it true? Did Dad really have another family? I had prepared for this moment. Yes, sweetie, but don't worry. I've made sure you're protected. Check your email. I sent you something important. David returned, looking lost. Maria's threatening to sue me. The house, the trust fund, everything's frozen. Anna, please, we can figure something out. I gathered my things. No, David, we can't. But don't worry. You're good at managing things, aren't you? As I walked to the door, he called after me. Where are you going? I turned back. The man standing there wasn't the powerful, confident person who had once belittled me. He was a desperate fraud watching his world fall apart. I have a meeting with the board, I said. They're very interested in how you've been using company funds for your personal life. You can't do this to me, he whispered. I'm not doing anything to you, David. You did this to yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. I opened the front door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing, he might want to call your lawyer. Mine will be in touch soon about the divorce. I stepped outside into the bright morning sunlight. Behind me, David stood in the doorway of what he thought was his perfect life. Phase 2 was complete. Everything was going exactly as planned. Everything fell apart for David just as I had planned. Within a week, he was officially fired as CFO. The board's investigation found even more fraud than I had uncovered. His career was ruined. Maria, terrified of losing everything, turned on him. She sued him, claiming she had no idea where the money came from. The house he bought for her was seized as part of the fraud case. Sitting in my lawyer's office, I reviewed the latest updates. The divorce is moving quickly, Jessica, my attorney, said. With the fraud charges and his legal troubles, he can't fight it. And Sophie's trust fund? I asked, though I already knew. Completely safe. You moved it before all of this started. She won't lose a penny. I nodded, relieved. Sophie had always been my priority. David had failed her as a father, but I never would. Surprisingly, Sophie took the news well. I always knew something wasn't right, she told me in a video call. He always missed important things, got defensive about his phone. I just never thought it was this bad. I'm sorry you had to find out like this, I said. Don't be, Mom. You protected us. You're the strongest person I know. Her words meant everything. A month later, David asked to meet. We sat in a quiet coffee shop, the same one where he used to meet Maria. The irony wasn't lost on me. I lost everything, he admitted, looking older. The board is pressing charges. Maria's suing me. She won't let me see Thomas. His voice cracked. Actions have consequences, David, I said. You made your choices. He shook his head. How did I not see it? I thought I was so clever, keeping my secret life. But you saw everything. You didn't see it because you didn't want to, I replied. You underestimated me. You thought I was just a housewife. That was your biggest mistake. He looked at me, eyes red. Is there any chance? No, I cut him off. The divorce will be final next month. You should focus on your fraud charges. As I stood to leave, he called after me. I really did love you once. I turned back. No, David. You loved the version of me that didn't question you. But I was always more than that. You just never noticed. 6 months later, I sat on my new apartment's balcony, watching the sunset. Sophie was home for spring break, studying at the table behind me. The divorce was final. David pleaded guilty to fraud to get a lighter sentence. Maria moved away with Thomas. Mom? Sophie called. Dad's lawyer emailed me. He's trying to appeal his sentence. Let him, I said. The evidence isn't going anywhere. She joined me on the balcony. You know what's funny? You never thought you'd figure it out. He always treated you like I was just a housewife. I smiled. Some people only see what they want to. Your father saw someone who wouldn't question him. He never looked deeper. His loss, Sophie said, hugging me. Oh, and I got an A on my forensic accounting midterm. Guess I take after my mom. I laughed, holding her close. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. No more lies, no more pretending. My phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. Final restitution papers filed. Everything's done. I typed back one word. Perfect. Looking out over the city lights, I realized I had lost a husband, but gained something more valuable. Self-respect, my daughter's admiration, and proof that I was stronger than anyone, especially David, had ever imagined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's moving on. And that's exactly what I had done. Where are my dogs? Emma's phone buzzed with a call from her mother-in-law, Patricia. Her voice was smug. Those useless dogs are gone. I did you a favor. Now you can get proper ones from a breeder. Emma's heart pounded as she gripped her desk at the vet clinic. What did you do with them? I took them to a shelter while you were at work. Honestly, having rescue dogs is embarrassing. What will people think? Max, Luna, and Bear weren't just pets. They were family. Max, a German Shepherd mix, had been left tied to a pole in the rain. Luna, a pit bull with one eye, had been rescued from a dogfighting ring. Bear, an old golden retriever mix, had been abandoned after his owner passed away. Which shelter? Emma asked, already opening her laptop. Patricia laughed, not telling. You'll just bring them back. What Patricia didn't know was that Emma had put GPS trackers in the dogs' collars after she accidentally left the gate open last month. She checked the app. The dogs weren't at any shelter. They were scattered in different locations. Her coworker Sarah walked in. You okay? Patricia gave away my dogs. Emma pointed at the screen. But look where they are. Sarah frowned. That's the old factory district and a highway rest stop. What is she up to? Emma grabbed her keys and texted her husband, David. Your mom took the dogs. Tracking them now. Meet me ASAP. David replied instantly, Wait too. She's gone too far. Patricia had moved in 6 months ago after her divorce. Since then, she had tried everything to get rid of the dogs. Leaving doors open, dropping chocolate on the floor by accident, and nonstop complaining. David arrived, furious. Where are they? Emma pointed at the map. Not shelters. What if she gave them to people who might hurt them? David pulled her into a hug. We'll find them. And Mom is moving out. They split up. David went to the rest stop, Sarah to the railway station, and Emma to the factory. At the warehouse, a rough-looking man stood outside, smoking. He eyed Emma. You lost? My dog is here. Black pit bull, one eye, she said firmly, showing him a photo. She has a tracker, and I already told the police. His face changed. I don't want trouble. Some lady paid me to keep her here for a few days, to teach someone a lesson. She's inside. Emma rushed in. Luna wagged her tail frantically, tied to a pipe. As she freed her, a message from David popped up. Got Bear. Locked in someone's garage. Mom paid them $200 to keep him. Then Sarah texted, found Max. Some teen was walking him all day. Now I told him it was for a surprise party. Emma's hands shook with anger. Patricia hadn't just dumped the dogs, she had hidden them on purpose. Another text from David. Taking Bear home. We need to talk about Mom. This ends today. Emma agreed. Patricia had finally crossed the line. She wanted control, wanted to prove she could take away what mattered most, but she had made one big mistake. She underestimated just how far Emma would go to protect her family, human and canine alike. Taking a stand. When I pulled into the driveway with Luna, Patricia stood on the porch, arms crossed. Her smug expression disappeared when she saw the dog. How did you? She started, then quickly recovered. Emma, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Those dogs are beneath our family status. I stared at her. Our family status? You mean the status you lost in your divorce? The one that forced you to move in with me, the daughter-in-law you hate. Her face turned red. How dare you? I was trying to help. David deserves better than living with these strays. A car pulled up behind me. David stepped out with Bear. His voice was sharp. You mean the dogs that helped me through my depression? The ones that make Emma happy? Those strays, Mother. Patricia hesitated. Darling, you don't understand. I had a surprise planned. My friend's poodles just had puppies. Save it. David cut her off. We found all 3 dogs. We know you paid people to hide them. What were you planning to tell us when we couldn't find them? Patricia's confidence wavered. She hadn't expected us to track them so quickly. Sarah arrived next, bringing Max. Our dogs, finally reunited, wagged their tails as Patricia stood stiffly on the porch. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I was just trying to make you see reason. The people I paid were only supposed to keep them for a week. A week? I stepped forward. You gave our dogs to strangers for a week. Do you know how dangerous that was? Nothing would have happened, she insisted. I was careful. The man at the factory owed me a favor, and the woman with the garage is a friend from church. The factory? David's voice went cold. You left one of our dogs at a factory. Patricia stammered. I had to make sure you couldn't find them too soon. By the time they came back, the poodles would be ready. You mean by the time we thought they were gone for good? I said. You paid strangers to hide our dogs, hoping we'd move on. Patricia flinched. When you say it like that, it sounds terrible. David laughed bitterly. You mean the trust fund you lost? The country club membership you can't afford anymore. That's status. Patricia's face crumpled. You don't understand. I needed control. I finished. Since you can't control your own life, you tried to control ours. The dogs huddled close, sensing the tension. Luna pressed against me, while Max and Bear stood beside David. David's voice was firm. You're leaving. Today, pack your things. But where will I go? Patricia's voice rose. You can't throw me out. I'm your mother. You're the woman who stole and hid our dogs, I said. We have GPS proof of where you took them. We have witnesses who confirm you paid them. Do you want us to call the police? Her face went pale. You wouldn't dare. Try us, David said. You have 3 hours to pack. After that, we're changing the locks. Patricia stormed inside, slamming doors as she packed. I knelt to hug our dogs, the relief hitting me all at once. David sat beside me on the grass, wrapping his arms around us. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I knew she was difficult, but I never thought she'd go this far. The GPS saved us, I said, stroking Max's fur. I never thought we'd need it, to protect them from her. Sarah crossed her arms. You know this isn't over, right? She won't just leave quietly. I watched Patricia's shadow move past the upstairs windows. I know, but this time, we have proof. She can't talk her way out of this. The next few hours were tense as Patricia packed, making sure to slam every door. But as I sat with my dogs, I felt stronger. This wasn't the end. Women like Patricia didn't give up easily. But today, we stood up to her. And sometimes the family you choose, especially the ones with fur and wagging tails, is more loyal than the one you're born into. 3 months after Patricia's dramatic exit, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The dogs were thriving, no longer walking on eggshells in their own home. David had installed security cameras around the property, a necessary precaution given his mother's tendency for dramatic gestures. We'd heard through family that Patricia had moved in with her sister in Colorado, telling anyone who would listen how her son and daughter-in-law had cruelly thrown her out. But the GPS data and witness statements told a different story, one that kept her from attempting any legal action against us. One quiet Sunday morning, as I sat on our porch watching the dogs play in the yard, a familiar car pulled into our driveway. My heart skipped a beat when Patricia stepped out, looking thinner and more subdued than I remembered. The dogs noticed her immediately. Luna and Max moved to stand guard on either side of me, while Bear watched cautiously from the yard. Their protective instincts never failed to amaze me. Emma, Patricia said softly, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps, may I speak with you? I noticed she wasn't trying to come closer, respecting the boundary the dogs had created. David's not home, I replied. I know. I came to talk to you, actually. She clutched her purse tightly. And to apologize. Those weren't words I ever expected to hear from Patricia. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. Go on. My therapist. She paused, seeming embarrassed. After everything happened, my sister insisted I get help. The therapist helped me see some things about myself. About why I did what I did. The dogs remained alert but calm. They'd always been good judges of character, and right now, they weren't showing signs of distress. It wasn't about the dogs, was it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Patricia shook her head. No, it was about control. After the divorce, losing my status, my friends, I felt powerless. Taking control of your lives, your home, even your pets. It was my way of feeling powerful again. She wiped a tear. It was wrong. All of it. I remained silent, letting her continue. Seeing how far you went to protect them, she gestured to the dogs. It made me realize something. You didn't just save these dogs once when you rescued them. You keep choosing them, keep protecting them, every day. That kind of loyalty, it's what I should have shown to my own family. Luna had relaxed slightly, her tail giving a tentative wag. Even she could sense the shift in Patricia's energy. I've been volunteering at a shelter in Colorado. Patricia continued, trying to understand. To make amends, I suppose. Last week, I helped reunite a lost dog with its family. Seeing their joy, I finally understood what I tried to take from you. I stood up, walking down the porch steps. The dogs moved with me, a furry honor guard. Why are you really here, Patricia? To say I'm sorry. To ask if there's any way to start rebuilding what I've destroyed. Not just with the dogs, but with you and David. I've lost so much already. I don't want to lose my son too. Looking at her now, I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine humility. The perfectly coiffed, controlling woman who would try to orchestrate our lives was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to finally understand the damage she caused. It won't be easy, I said finally. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But if you're serious about making amends, about respecting our boundaries and our choices. I am, she interjected quickly. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'd like to try. Maybe we could start with short visits. Supervised, of course. I'd like to properly meet the dogs, learn their stories. Bear, always the most forgiving of our trio, had wandered closer to Patricia. She remained still, letting him approach on his own terms. We'll talk to David, I said, but no more schemes, no more manipulation. One wrong move, and that's it. Patricia nodded, watching as Bear gently sniffed her hand. Thank you, Emma, for giving me a chance to make things right. As I watched my former adversary cautiously pet our senior rescue dog, I realized that sometimes the path to healing comes from unexpected places. Patricia had tried to tear our family apart, but ended up learning what made it strong. Unconditional love, unwavering loyalty, and the courage to protect what matters most. Our dogs had taught us all valuable lessons about forgiveness, boundaries, and the true meaning of family. They were never just dogs. They were the heart of our home, the catalyst for necessary change, and living proof that second chances, when earned, could lead to beautiful beginnings. The GPS trackers remained, though. Some precautions were worth keeping, even in times of peace.